Good morning, ma'am, and good morning, classmates. Now, I am tasked to present on forensic linguistics. So, for the overview of my report, I'm going to define forensic linguistics, give the current issues in forensic linguistics, enumerate the uses and importance of forensic linguistics, and describe the legal systems in policing and courtroom. So, first, the definition of forensic linguistics. So, some say that when we say forensic linguistics, they just provide expert evidence on language, for police investigations or court hearings. But for some, they just say forensic linguists are just essentially a consultant for hire for the police and the lawyers. And some may also say that forensic linguistics means that it extends to courtrooms, particularly criminal ones, by analyzing the discussion between lawyers and witnesses. But later on, they derived in this final meaning of forensic linguistics, which is it denotes research in all areas of legal activity, from the language of legislation through police stations and even into prisons and out into the world of consumers, families, and corporations. So, forensic linguistics is not just used inside the police stations or court hearings, but also it can be used in the world of consumerism, inside the family, and corporations. Jan Svartvik is considered as the father of forensic linguistics. He founded forensic linguistics when he was a linguists professor, and he helped the police in examining the written statements of the accused, John Evans, where John Evans is a suspect from the crime of murder, where they say that he is the suspect in the murder of his wife and his daughters. So, from the knowledge of Svartvik in linguistics, he uses this knowledge to give the um, to give or to help the police in solving the case of Evans. So, forensic language has many names before. Some says that it is named as language and law, forensic English, forensic discourse analysis, and forensic phonetics. But later on, they derived on the word forensic language or forensic linguistics. So there are also current issues in forensic linguistics. Here are some of the questions um, in forensic linguistics. No? So there are challenges also on how to do or how to do forensic linguistics. So some of these is how do you know whether that person is the one who wrote this statement or this document, or whether if a child is involved in a crime, how do you know if the statements of the child is factual, or maybe the child is just lying, or in using an interpreter, how is there any misunderstandings when someone uses an interpreter or none? So these are some of the questions. So, language and expertise. Forensic linguistics is mainly used during these situations or in these situations. So, when someone has been threatened and police are trying to discover who made the threat, so they focus on examining the texts or the written statements or written threats given when someone has apparently killed themselves. So in suicide, forensic linguistics also can be used, especially in examining the suicidal notes to know whether that person really commits suicide or was murdered. And also when someone has been arrested and interviewed and the resulting written police statement has been tampered. So there are certain changes na or statement taking. So what do forensic linguists do? So forensic linguists work for prosecution, defense, police investigations. So mainly they associate forensic linguists in studying language based on crimes. No? There are crimes involved. So they are the one who examine documents or written statements to help the lawyers, the judges, the police in analyzing the evidences, written evidences. So role of forensic linguistics. Forensic linguistics helps in in any criminal investigation where the perpetrator writes an original document, law enforcement can turn to forensic linguists to analyze the writing, whether there is a similarity or is the suspect is really the one, who wrote the written evidences. So forensic linguistics compare documents to documents, writings to a person. As they say, your writings can define you as a person. So they mostly focused on writings, written documents. So the importance of forensic linguistics. Lawyers, judges, and jury members can use these analyses to help evaluate questions of guilt and innocence more fairly. And translators and interpreters can also use this research to communicate with greater accuracy. So forensic linguistics also, as lawyers and judges do, they serve justice and helps people to know whether that person is really guilty or not guilty. So they help in investigating, because lawyers cannot do their job alone. They can ask questions, but then they don't know whether the written evidences is really made by the suspect or other person. So next, use of linguistic evidence in legal proceedings. So you can use forensic or linguistic evidence in these types of proceedings. The author identification, forensic stylistics, discourse analysis, linguistic dialectology, forensic phonetics, forensic transcription, and variation. But I'm going to focus more on author identification. So here, how to do an authorship investigation. So when we say authorship investigation, forensic linguistics or forensic analysis is mostly used in authorship investigation to know who writes who. No? So it compares the differences in the written work and gather the evidence needed to investigate potential cases of contract cheating. So mainly on contracts and wills. No? If the will is really made by the author, kung siya ba talaga yung gumawa or not. So they compare the written works of the author to the written works of the written evidence of the will. So how are we going to do an authorship investigation? So these are a step-by-step procedure in doing an authorship investigation. So in order for you to know if the written evidence is really written by the author, you're going first to examine how the author writes or the writing styles used by the author. Then find whether there are features in the language of the author the vocabulary of the author, the phrase choice, the syntax, the spelling, and the discourse used by the author, and then compare it with the written evidence. So there are two types of studies in the authorship investigation. First is the quantitative and the qualitative. When we say quantitative, it focuses on the counting of markers, multiple authorship markers. No? The main focus is on counting the markers, while in qualitative, examining particular occurrences of marked features in detail. So in quantitative, you're going to count the markers. In qualitative, you're going to examine the occurrence of markers. So this is an example of authorship investigation in the crime of Violet Hussein. So Violet Hussein was born in Japan, and then she later grew up in Hawaii and then moved to Alaska, where in Alaska she eventually passed away. So leaving, or Violet Hussein left a will. Written there is a statement where she is leaving most of his estate worth $1.6 million to her neighbors. So the family of Violet Hussein was quite shocked about the will. Why is Violet Hussein giving this large amount of her estate mostly to her neighbors? And on her will attached are letters for Kim. These are the letters of Violet Hussein to her friend Kim, where none of her friends or family knew about. So because of the evidences, because of the will from Violet Hussein, the siblings contested the will. So with the help of forensic linguists, they discovered that Violet Hussein, because she moved from different countries and places, so she have this so-called language barriers, or she knows some of the languages from Japan, from Hawaii, and from Alaska. And most of his writings, or most of the documents from Violet Hussein, was found that she is fond of using Creole language. So, for example, replacing mass nouns with count nouns, or absence of numbers, number concord between subjects and particular verbs. So, later on, the forensic linguists examined the letters from Kim and found out that there is only one feature in Creole language, or in the letter, which is deletion. So, for example, they deleted the auxiliary do. Instead of saying, hey, he say he do not want my money, then in the Kim letters, it states there, he say he not want my money. Or plural markers, I tell you this thing, instead of these things. So maybe the neighbors of Violet Hussein just say, maybe they won't find out, let's just erase or delete some of the words, or some of the letters. Maybe that is how they, or maybe that is how they observe, not, I'm sorry for the mosquitoes. Maybe that is how they observe the writings of Violet Hussein. So later on, with the help of forensic linguists, the judge found out that it was the neighbors who wrote and prepared the Kim letters and who ruled the will of Violet Hussein. So because of that, the lawyer or the judge is giving favor to her siblings. So related to forensic linguistics are the document examination, software forensic, semiotics, plagiarism detection, linguists and lawyers interaction. So, wait lang. So these are some of ways where you can relate forensic linguistics to. For example, document examination. So in document examination, mostly in forensic linguistics, forensic linguists do the examination of documents, especially written documents and audio recordings. In software forensic, we have some software or technology which can be used in knowing whether or in comparing written evidences. Semiotics is knowing the different parts, or for example the morphology, syntax, no, of the written evidences. Plagiarism detection is, I believe we also have a software which can detect whether plagiarism is present um, in that yung parang, for example, I believe most of the teachers are familiar with plagiarism, especially when we gave our students our projects, no? Example, written projects where we are going to detect whether the students just copied the answers or the documents from other authors without proper credentials. So that is also related to forensic linguistics. So next is linguists and lawyers interaction. So I believe that linguists and lawyers are really paired in the giving verdicts to the accused to know whether the accused is really guilty or not guilty. So the linguists help the lawyers in analyzing the written documents or evidences, and the lawyers also vary their verdicts to the analysis given by the linguists. So next is the legal system in forensic linguistics. So there is this policing and courtroom language. So in policing, police interviews are mostly face-to-face interview by the police and the one being questioned or the interviewee. So in linguistics study, policing can be divided into two parts: the audio recorded interview and the non-audio recorded interview. For the interview which are not audio recorded, it can somehow be transitory, given that the record or the focus or the evidence, the focus of evidence of the police will be merely on the written statement by the police interviewer, and then they will just disregard the actual face-to-face interview. While in the interviews which are audio recorded, they're going to base their decisions on the written statement and somehow listen to the audio recording. So when we say audio recorded, mas ano siya, mas clear, no? Kasi when we say not recorded, maybe there is a tendency where statement turning is going to happen, especially the police is the one who the police is the one who give or lead the flow in the interview. So maybe iba yung masulat, or there is a statement turning, no, or misinterpretations. But when we say audio recorded, they will also listen to the recordings on the actual interview, while also focusing on the written statements by the police. So this is an example of a written statement on a crime where his friend is being murdered. No? So in excerpt 1 and excerpt 2, it is the written statement. While in excerpt 3 comes the rendition. No? Rendition is where there is taking of taking turns in talking, or where the interview happens. There is an interaction between the interviewer and the interviewee, where the interviewer is the police and the interviewee is the witness. So, second rendition in excerpt 3, in excerpt 4, is just an interview, merely an interview between a police and a witness. But in excerpt 5, which states the fourth and final rendition, it is the time when the police is asking, if it is really the statement of the witness. So there is this technique of police where instead of saying the written or the statement of the witness, they're going to um, change some of the statements to know whether there is an asymmetrical differences between the first statement and the second statement. So as you observe in excerpt 5, or in excerpt, in excerpt 3, number 90, the witness says that he had about 2 pins. While in excerpt 5 here, number 715, the police asks if he drank 3 pints, and the witness just says yes. So instead of saying 2 pints, where the written statement or the interviewee says a while ago that he just drank about 2 pints, the police changed 2 from 3, to know whether the witness agrees or disagree. And then the witness agrees, so there is a confusion, from the police na why did he agree. So there is an asymmetrical difference from the first statement and the second statement. So next is the courtroom language. When we say courtroom language, forensic linguistics is merely focusing on the courtroom language, especially in the legal setting. So there is these 2 research themes in courtroom language. First is examining the intricacies of courtroom questioning between lawyers and witnesses. So the forensic linguist merely focuses on examining the questionings or the questions from the lawyers and the answers from the witnesses. And also they examine the words delivered by the judges to the juries. So why questions are mostly used in courtroom hearings? To allow witness to give relatively lengthy answers and thus co-construct a narrative with lawyers. So mostly, why questions are used in courtroom hearings? So that instead of just asking, do you, or are you? So instead of just giving, or the witness giving the answer yes or no, the lawyers mostly use why questions so that the witness may have time to construct a narrative, to tell the story. No, the answers are lengthy so that the lawyers themselves will have, or will be, the witness will be giving the story behind the questions to the lawyers, so that lawyers can analyze more instead of just the witness saying yes or no. And at some point, why questions may lead to stories or narratives which may also affect the um, this may also affect the decisions of the judge and the jury. So for example, in excerpt 6, the lawyer asks the why question. Why were you mentioning your boyfriend Alan? So the witness is giving the lawyer the story, no, on why she is mentioning Alan. And in excerpt 7, the lawyer also uses the why questions. Why did you touch his shoulders? So there, the witness also give a narrative or a story on why did he really touch his shoulders. So next is interpreters. Interpreters also give um, they're also part in the courtroom hearings, especially when the witness is from different nation speaking different languages. So interpreters are used, but there these interpreters must be a legal interpreter. So the job of a legal interpreter is to orient the norms of interactional structure. She or he must manage politeness and self-presentation, resolve potential ambiguities, and attend to speaker instructions. So he must be oriented, no, to the on how to interact, especially to the questions of the lawyers and the witness, on how to be polite at all times and present himself or herself as professional. Next, he must also be able to resolve different mga ambiguities, potential ambiguities, and he or she must also listen attentively, no, to the speaker's instructions, because he is the key to the understanding between the lawyer, the judge, and the um, witness or the suspect or the accused. So if the interpreter is not listening well, he or she may lead the lead a misunderstanding inside the courtroom, inside the court. So there must be some falsifications of statements, no? Iba yung masabi ng interpreters, instead iba yung meaning nung accused. So interpreters, yeah, that's it. So that is my report. So the end will be, according to Roger Shui, there's no need to try to apply linguistics to any other area of life before you have first learned what it is that you have to apply. So according to him, he's also a linguist professor. So according to him, you cannot be a linguist if you don't know anything about linguistics. So you cannot just easily compare writings, examine documents. If you don't have the idea of linguistics. Example, the phonology. You don't know about phonology, morphology, phonemes, syntax, semantics, and so on. So you don't have the ability to be a forensic linguist. So to be a forensic linguist or to be a linguist, you have to really be open in one's knowledge, no? Accept challenges, learn a lot, and um, for you to be called a real linguist, you have to know linguistics and apply linguistics. So that's it, and that's the end of my report. So case closed. Thank you and good morning.